6 floors above you at the moment, because I'm up in the main newsroom of BBC Television News. Now, this is the nerve centre of the television news operation. This is where all the information from all over the world comes in. And let me tell you a little bit about what's happening in this room. Now, over there, we have the foreign news. Now, they're in constant touch with all the BBC correspondents all across the globe, and they're waiting for satellite reports to come in from many countries. At the moment, a satellite feed, as they call it, is due in very shortly from Afghanistan, with all the latest about the troubles in that country. And, of course, later on, during this afternoon, the Space Shuttle Discovery returns back to Earth again, and that'll be watched very closely by our friends there in Foreign News. Now, over on this side, we have the Home News Desk. They look after everything that's happening in the British Isles. The organiser here, Alwena, is probably at the moment finding out the latest situation from Scarborough, where the Prime Minister is speaking today, and where, of course, there have been a lot of security alerts lately. And just across there, well, that's the camera desk. Now, this is where the 36, I think it is, camera crews of television news are organised from. They're sent all around the country, all around the world from this desk. They report back in here to tell them what pictures, what stories they've got. Right, let's take a look at the rest of this very big newsroom. Now, Newsround office, by the way, is above here on the next floor, a much smaller office. And normally this main newsroom is a hive of activity during the weekdays, because there's the 1 o'clock news, the 6 o'clock news, the 9 o'clock news, and of course all the hourly summaries as well. Now, that desk there, people working on that desk, that is normally the 1 o'clock news desk, but at the weekend it's manned by the people doing all the weekend news summaries, and we're going to be talking to them later on. Just behind over there, that's normally the 6 o'clock news desk. And all down here, we have the desks where the news writers work, writing their news bulletins for all the different all the different bulletins. And no typewriters around, no noise of typewriters, you'll gather, because now we all use computers. We sit at our workstations, hitting our computers to write the stories for television news. And down here is the main newsroom of the 9 o'clock news. Empty at the moment, but of course busy all during the weekday. And just across here is the hot seat. This is where the newsreader sits for the 9 o'clock news, for all the hourly summaries, and of course for the weekend bulletins, which are being read this week by my good friend Moira Stuart. Hello, Moira.
Good morning, John.
You're here a bit early this morning?
A little earlier than usual, yes, but I've been on call since we've opened up on transmission this morning, and I shall be here until approximately 8:05 or thereabouts, when either Martin Lewis or Michael Burke will take over for the late bulletin and stay here until close down.
And you're on call, of course, for news flashes,
indeed.
Yes, anything really dramatic happens. Yeah. Well, let's see if we can have a view now that we don't normally get of the newsreader's desk. Tim, on the remote camera, can you come in and have a look behind the scenes of the BBC News, because well, you've got lots of telephones here to keep you in touch, presumably, with things that are happening. And, of course, what are these books? Tell us about these books.
These are the newsreaders' Bibles, and the first is a listing of every British name in the country, and this is a pronunciation guide to the British language, to the English language, I should say.
So if any awkward name comes up, just as you're about to go on air, you can quickly dive into the book.
As long as it's British, I've got a chance.
Yeah.
If it's foreign, one goes for broke.
Take a running jump at it. Right, let's have a look even more behind the scenes now, because as you can see, there is no cameraman manning the cameras here in television news. All the cameras are remotely controlled, aren't they, Moira?
Yes.
Which is a bit... they can do things like that. They can go up and down, and they can go sideways, but they can't go backwards and forwards on their own, can they? No,
but they're remotely controlled from the gallery, as you know, and I'm in constant touch with the gallery through my little squawk box here. Mm-hmm. And the cameras, although they're remotely controlled, the machinery, the autocue, is operated from your computer, isn't it? With a lot of help from my very good friend Diane Perkin this morning, who is the autoscript operator, and she can transmit the script from the from my terminal here onto the actual camera lens.
Because, as I said earlier, we don't use typewriters anymore. We use these computers fed into a massive computer frame thing, aren't they? And then we can actually look at all the stories as they're being written. Indeed. Can you demonstrate that to us, Moira?
Well, this morning, our latest bit of goodie, I shall just put it on the screen now, so will be some information from the Education Secretary, Kenneth Baker. Indeed.
So we can see that now on your auto-script machine. It's being scrolled round, isn't it, by Diane. And you read it They're very good, aren't they? Because they keep the pace just right as we're speaking.
They follow the reader as opposed to, or Diane would follow me as opposed to going ahead of me, hopefully.
Yes. And let's just look elsewhere around this thing, because, I mean, how do you feel when you're just about to go on air and there's a big news story and people know nothing about it, and it could be quite a tragic story?
The name of the game is keeping one's own emotions under control, and it's a matter of literally trying to get the information to people with urgency, yes, but as clearly and as quickly as the newsroom can get it across. And I'm just a link in the chain. That's,
a very efficient one.
Hopefully a useful one.
Well, Moira, nice to talk to you.
John, lovely to see you.
We'll be back here again in the newsroom later on, and I think maybe you're going to prepare a story for us.
Indeed.
But meantime, let's go over to join Trevor and Simon for some cartoon information.
We have some cartoon information for you.
Stand by, because it's time for a cartoon.
All the news from all over the world comes through before it goes onto your television screens. And what's happening at the moment is that Peter O'Kill there, who's the weekend editor of television news, is having a meeting with his sub-editors and picture editors to discuss what kinds of stories are going to appear today on the lunchtime news and the tea time news. So let's just hear what the end of the conference.
And we'll keep an eye on Rushdie as well. Sport, of course, also is looking very strong indeed today, isn't it, Andrew, with the FA Cup and the rugby? Yeah. We'll have a separate chat about that in a minute, because we're clearly going to need to have a good look at how we tackle the FA Cup with the graphics. And I think Kevin will be in for a minute, and we can get on with that. Just a quick reminder, we are on early today. It's 12:50, our lunchtime news, so lots of early scripts, please.
Yes, please, the earlier the better.
Yeah. Right.
OK, everyone?
Peter, can I interrupt you now? Is that finished, the meeting?
Yeah, it is, John.
Good,
Hello.
good. Hello. Now, is it a busy day, a quiet day, or what?
It is. It's starting to build up. Weekends tend to be very busy days for news, both on the home and foreign front, and it started off fairly quietly today, but quite a lot of foreign stories are coming in now, as well as 2 strong home stories that we'd already got.
What's the big news?
Well, I think the big news today, or will be, because she hasn't made it yet, is Mrs Thatcher is making a major speech at the Conservative conference in Scarborough. There's also a big story on the new security measures which are coming in force today at a number of British airports.
So you've got reporters, camera teams out covering
We
all
have.
those
Our
stories.
political correspondent John Harrison is up in Scarborough, and reporter David Loyne has gone to one of the airports that are implementing new security measures.
Well, tell you what, just to show how the news system works with its computers and things, perhaps we could have a story, a brief news story, which we can have at the end of our little chat. Maybe Moira could read it for us. Perhaps you could choose something?
Yes, well, certainly. I mean, one story that we'll be seeing later this afternoon when the space shuttle lands in California. We'll be getting pictures in, hopefully in time for our early evening bulletin. Perhaps, Jeff, you'd like to put a script in on that?
Certainly.
So what's happening, Jeff? How do you get the information about that, about the space shuttle?
Well, the great thing about the computer, of course, is that I can get the wire services as well as being able to write the scripts in the same system. So I can get my information on paper if necessary, or up on the screen if it's just coming in. And on the basis of that and what I know and what I'm being told by my colleagues elsewhere, we can then write the stories.
Right. Well, we'll leave you to do that for us.
I'll just finish this one off.
Thank you. Well, Peter, you've worked in newspapers and in television. I mean, what's the main difference about television news, do you think?
Oh, I think quite clearly it's very, very complicated. It's far more difficult than most people realise. I mean, I've worked, as you say, in busy television and Fleet Street newsrooms, and there is a huge difference here. I mean, the main problem is having to cope with moving live pictures.
With all the pictures, yeah.
Absolutely.
Coming in by satellite from all over the world.
I mean, it can be difficult enough getting the basic story written, and then you've got the second problem of getting the pictures in, and then the third problem of matching the words to the pictures, and then getting it out on air.
I see on the screen over here, you've got, well, that's a picture, what, from coming in from Afghanistan?
These are some of the pictures which have just come in from Afghanistan. I mean, we do have a system here where I can access various VT suites.
So what's
you can see
there,
a grid system there, and I can literally call into any VT suite where something's there being recorded for a weekend programme. That is just nothing at the moment. But there are the Afghanistan pictures. I mean, later in the day, probably in about half an hour, this screen will be full of pictures coming in.
Because I see on quite a few of those squares, it says VTN not yet available.
Yes.
So video...
I mean, yeah, there is nothing there for them to see, but I mean, even for our short lunchtime news, I'll be taking in pictures from Scarborough, from Glasgow, possibly from Plymouth. We've got the Afghanistan pictures in there.
So at the moment, downstairs here, there are people working hard editing reports to be shown on the bulletin.
Absolutely. I mean, you've already seen this large newsroom here, but downstairs on an identical floor of an identical size is a huge area where all the videotape, film and quarter-inch tape is edited together.
And then you'll be able to punch them back onto your matrix screen there, see the edited film without leaving your desk. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the material comes in time, I can hear the sound by plugging in with a pair of earphones, and it does make life a lot easier. It makes it far easier to monitor most of the stuff that's coming in.
Right, well, as you say, a busy day. Let's see how Jeff's getting on with his story about the Space Shuttle Discovery. How's it going, Jeff?
It's now written. I'm happy with it. So the next thing to do is just to run a final check to make sure all the spelling's correct and that it's easy to read.
How long is it?
It's about 20 seconds.
20 seconds.
And it just refers to the fact that everything's on target for a safe landing, when the shuttle is expected to touch down, and a comment from the project controller who says that he's very happy with it being one of the most trouble-free missions they've ever done.
So you managed to get all that information by looking at the wire agencies on your computer screen?
We have the wires, and we also have, of course, from our foreign news colleagues, their reports from the people in the field, from Washington, from the American network news agencies that we're in touch with. They give us that information as well.
I think a lot of people are intrigued as to how we know how long to write the bulletins as well. Newsreaders speak at 3 words per second,
That's
don't
what
they?
we aim at.
Yes, so you have to write exactly the right number of words for that. Yes.
And the sums have to be accurate because we have to be on time with our news bulletins,
Yes. So
they fit into the rest of the schedules.
What happens now then, Jeff? You do that. What do you do with your script to make sure that Moira gets it to read?
Well, when I'm happy with it, I press the save button.
Uh-huh.
And the script now moves over to Lynn, who is responsible for the next stage of getting the story.
Downloading it onto... Now, can we see it now across in the newsroom? There it is. We're seeing there's Moira. That's a behind-the-scenes view of Moira with the words there on the autoscript that Jeff has just written for us. So, Peter, can I thank you very much indeed for allowing us to come into the newsroom this morning. Thank you and all of the team. And now here's Moira Stuart with a special news bulletin just for Going Live.
Thank you, John, and all's well on target for the safe landing back on Earth of the American Space Shuttle Discovery this afternoon. It's been in orbit for 5 days and it is expected to touch down at Edwards Air Force Base in California just after 2:30. And the man in charge of the project says it's been one of the most trouble-free shuttle missions so far. That's it from this special news bulletin. Now back to Trevor and Simon.
Thanks, Moira.
Thanks, Moira.
Trev, do you keep up to date with current affairs then?
Oh, yes, I watch all the news. I watch the 6 o'clock news, I watch the 7 o'clock news on Channel 4, then I watch the 9 o'clock news, then news at 10 on ITV, I watch that, then at 11 o'clock on BBC I watch Newsnight.
Yeah, Newsround?
Oh, yes, Newsround, of course I watch Newsround.
Yeah, and what about the papers?
Oh, yeah, I read all the papers, the dailies, the Sundays, the magazines, yeah.
Oh, you must be really well informed then. I envy you. Does this mean you're constantly in touch?
No, just constantly depressed.
Oh, Trev, all the news isn't bad.
Isn't it?
No, I mean, yes, actually, yeah, it is all bad.
Still, it's one way of changing things, isn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, if we see something shocking on TV, then it means we want to get up and do something about it.
What, cry, panic?
No, I mean, something more positive.
Well, switch over, switch off, panic a bit more, just panic.
No, I mean, if you see an injustice in the world, then you want to sort of join a group that's going to fight against it or write to your MP. And if you're using products that pollute the environment, then don't buy them. I mean, there's always things you can do, and that's where good news reporting helps.
You're right. That's why I'm going to do something about some of the shocking exclusives I've just been reading.
Exclusives, really?
Yeah. Have you not heard about them? Yeah. A bus was found on the North Pole. Greenfly ate Elvis Presley's hamster. Fergie's bottom squashes pensioner. I mean, somebody should look into that.
Fergie's bottom?
Yeah, I mean, what somebody should do is look into these news things, do something about them, because Trev, where are you going? Hello? Trev, what's going on? Am I missing out on something here? What's going on? Trev, what's going on? I know what's going on, you know. I read the papers. I know what's going on. What's going on? Help.
What did it say? Who's won that race? What's the weather like today?
She came out and she said, as it's for the children of Britain, I will talk to you. And did you ever imagine when you began your work here that your mission would eventually become worldwide and that you would become so famous?
Nothing at all.
Some metal trays to keep us from the heat.
This is John Craven for Newsround in West Africa.
Please welcome today's press conference guest, John Craven. Thank you. The mighty John Craven. Welcome
Nice
to the
to be
programme.
here.
Masses and masses of questions, and we start with Patrick.
In the Lockerbie disaster, 270 people died, and it was in the press for weeks and weeks. 2 weeks later, there was a Bangladesh boat crash. 370 people died. Why was this not in the press as much as the Lockerbie disaster?
Well, yes, I mean, there's an old story in journalism that, you know, one person dead in Britain is worth hundreds dead in the third world. That is not true as far as Newsround is concerned. Newsround, since it started, has always been very concerned with what's happening to people in the third world. And in fact, we did report that story on Newsround, and we reported the floods in Bangladesh in great detail when many other people didn't really bother about it.
Okay.
Let's go to the phones. Hello, who's on line 1?
Hello.
Hello, who are you?
Helen Frye.
Hello, Helen. What's your question?
Well, I have to choose my GCSE options just after Easter, and I'm quite interested in going into journalism. And I'd like to know some subjects like do you need languages, or would the humanities be better, or what do you think?
Yes, well, I think basically for journalism, what you really need to get eventually is a degree these days. When I started in journalism, that wasn't really necessary. I just had O-levels, and I went in at 17 into journalism. But nowadays, most people say that if you'd like to join the BBC as a journalist on television news, well, you would have to have a degree to start with, and then perhaps some experience as well in journalism. So really concentrate, certainly languages, English and a foreign language, preferably. Humanities, yes, but just to get as many GCSEs as you can. And then some sixth form colleges do have journalism courses now which help you prepare for a career in journalism, so you might inquire about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Please could you just say happy birthday to my friend Charlotte. She's 14 today. She's called Charlotte Pilkington.
All done.
Okay, all done. Well done.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck, Helen.
Laura has a question. Off you go, Laura.
Are there any items you can't put on Newsround because they're unsuitable? If so, what are they?
Yeah. Well, you put me in an awkward position there, don't you? Because I can't really go into any great detail because you're our audience and you're the people we don't really consider it unsuitable for. But certainly we don't do stories to do with any great violence on Newsround, and we avoid showing violent scenes on videotape on Newsround. We don't do anything really to do with sex. We did about AIDS, of course, because we thought it was important to warn children about AIDS, and also the fact that most young people are not ever going to get AIDS. They don't get it from all kinds. I mean, people thought maybe get it from a cuddle with your parents. You might get AIDS. A lot of confusion about it. So we felt it was important then to put the record straight as far as the audience was concerned.
And what would you say to children who say news is boring?
Well, I hope it's not boring on Newsround anyway. Do you think it is on Newsround? Because we try and make the world sound a very exciting and interesting place for our viewers. I mean, obviously we have to have the very serious news, the tragic news, because it's important we tell you about that. But we do live in an exciting world, and lots of interesting things are happening all over the place, and we try and reflect that on Newsround, try and tell you about them.
Let's now go to line 2.
Hello?
Hello, we've got another Helen.
Yes.
Hello, Helen. What's
Hello,
your question?
Helen.
I'd like to ask John Craven who he'd most like to interview.
Oh, that's a difficult one. There's lots of people. I mean, I think the person I really wanted to interview most, you saw on that little clip I did do, and that was Mother Teresa. We were filming in India for Newsround Extra, and we were told that she wouldn't... Oh, I should have put that up again, shouldn't I? We were told that she wasn't very well, but she did agree to see us and gave a very moving interview in her, what's called a mother house, which is her headquarters in Calcutta, surrounded by all the desolate people sleeping on the streets, and there was Mother Teresa finding the time to talk to the children of Britain. A few other people I would like to interview as well, but, you know, names don't just come to mind at the moment.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you very
Helen.
much. Bye.
Liam.
When you feel really strongly about something, is it hard not to be biased about it?
Well, you must not be biased. I mean, a television journalist or good newspaper journalist is not biased in any way. Your job, no matter how you feel about anything, is to collect all the information and give it straightforwardly to the viewers or the readers without showing any bias. I mean, some newspapers make no pretense about the fact that they are politically biased. And so you've got to read some of their stories with a sort of pinch of salt because they're showing their political colours as they're telling the story. But we certainly don't do that on radio and television.
Mm-hmm. Back to the phones. Line 3.
Hello, it's Charlotte.
Hello, Charlotte. What's your question?
I wondered what the most distressing thing that he's seen in all the time you've been presenting Newsround is.
Oh, Charlotte, what a question. I mean, there have been very many distressing scenes. I mean, we've had something like 3,000 editions of Newsround, and in that time, a lot of very unhappy things have happened in the world. I think whenever you see pictures of natural disasters, it makes you just grateful to be alive yourself. I mean, you realize the awful things that have happened, and it normally happens in the most beautiful places to the poorest of people. And you watch the pictures coming in and think, oh, we have to be obviously careful what we show you on Newsround of these disasters. But some things are just so tragic, so pathetic, that it makes you think, well, can we show this or not? And I think at times it is important to show, to not sort of, as it were, sanitize the news for you, to make it too clean and pure, because there are important things and quite disastrous things that you should know about. Our great problem every time is to know just how much to show you, because don't forget that you're watching Newsround many of the time without your parents watching, and especially a lot of younger children watching. We have to tell the news in a way that they will understand and show pictures that they will be able to cope with without getting any advice from an adult around, because there may not be any adults around.
Is that your decision, John?
Yes.
It's your decision. You decide how far that goes. Yes, I take that decision as
to what we should show and what we should tell on Newsround. Okay?
Thanks. Thank you, Charlotte. Yep, we'll see to that. Thank you.
Andrew.
If you were starting a career today, would you still go into journalism?
Yes, oh, I certainly would, yes. I think it's a wonderful job to actually, especially with a job like mine, to be able to go around the world, to meet all sorts of people, go to all kinds of interesting places, and report back to you about what I see. But it's hard work, but it's almost like a holiday to be able to do all that sort of thing. I mean, I've never, ever tired of my job. I think it's a great career. There are some aspects of journalism, obviously, that I don't particularly approve of. Some of the newspapers, I don't think, you know, you can't really call that journalism. But I reckon the kind of journalism that we do is a great life.
Rachel has a sort of a follow-on from that, or actually before that, really.
What made you decide to go from newspaper journalism to television, and are they both completely different?
Yes, they are totally different. In my days, you see, there was not really a lot of television around. It's grown an awful lot since I was 16. And so what I decided to do was have a go at newspapers, and then, because I'd been on television before I was a journalist, I was on a teenage show before I became a journalist. And then I thought, well, good to go back to television again, and so I started off as a sort of radio newsreader and then became a journalist, yeah.
Thank you.
But in fact, I think I've got a bit of news for you. Ask me which I like to do best. And in fact, I've decided that I'm going to leave Newsround in the summer. I've had 17 marvellous years doing Newsround, and for the last 2 years editing the programme as well. But I think maybe now is a time for me to have a go at doing something else. And so I've worked behind the scenes and I've worked in front of cameras, and really, I think basically I'm a broadcaster, you know, and I like being a broadcaster. So in the summertime, I should be saying goodbye to Newsround and doing other things.
Gosh, we're all a bit struck dumb here. You've saved that bit of news for us, haven't you? You've saved that for us. Thank you for telling us, but we're all a bit...
What are you going to do then?
Well, it's a bit early to say yet, because I've still got another 4 months or so editing Newsround. But I thought it'd be nice to tell you here today, break the news.
Whatever you will do, we'll be broadcasting.
Oh, yes, yes. I think once you've picked up a microphone as a broadcaster, it's very difficult to put that microphone back down again and just sit behind a desk.
Yes.
And if you have the, the option of being, for me anyway, of being sitting behind a desk or broadcasting, it's broadcasting every time.
Well, mine's spinning round here because we had got a clip that we were going to spring on you anyway, and I'm jolly glad that we've got it now, because I think that up to 1989, this is one of John's finest moments in broadcasting, a little bit different from the John that we all know and love.
I can give you the starlight, love unchanging and true. Call and I will be all you ask of me. Music in spring, flowers from a king, all these I bring.
Will you tell us the story behind that clip?
Yes, that was from
John as Gary Glitter,
the
I think
Record Breakers, yes, and the Record Breakers Christmas show. And the producer asked us if we all had a wildest dream. And I said, well, I've always wanted to be able to sing. I can't sing a note. And when I was...
You'd never have guessed from that clip, would we?
Of course not, of course not. And when I was a young lad, I went to Leeds Empire and I saw a star topping the bill, and he walked down his big staircase and the microphone came up and he had a white tuxedo on and he sang beautifully. I said, I'd love to be able to do that. So they fixed it for me. But the staircase had a hole in it, the microphone drooped over, the band were playing out of key.
Did you know that was going to happen?
No idea that was going to happen. No, that was all done to me.
Oh, John, we say well done for that.
Yes, and it's...
Thank you for Newsround for all these years.
Well, I shall be watching, from the summer onwards, I shall be watching at 5 o'clock every night to see what's happening on Newsround.
Yes, it's taken us all a little bit by surprise, but we do wish you well. I mean, we've
Thank you very much
all
indeed.
enjoyed it,
yes.
And we look forward to your next time. You're not going just yet, are you?
Oh, no, I'll be here for a few months yet, and I just hope that everybody here and all the millions of other people have got something out of Newsround over the years and will continue to do so. It goes from strength to strength.
John, thank you very much. Thank you, and
thank you.
Very best of luck. Well, we've got a programme for you next week, as usual.